Welcome back, and I'm prepared to be bedazzled because today I'm going to be shedding light on the flagrantly deplorable injustices of Rekon retail that were perpetrated against me. So, what are they, you may ask? Without further ado, without further delay, without further procrastination, allow me to demystify the answer to that inquiry right here, right now. Before we commence this video, I just wanted to preface this video by stating that I've never been in a situation akin to this situation before on a gig economy application, even though I've worked over 70 plus gig economy shifts on gig economy applications. Succinctly stated, I was hired by Rekon Retail to work a gig economy shift, and I subsequently drove almost 80 miles round trip to Rekon Retail's job site to work the gig economy shift. After I arrived at Rekon Retail's job site, I was sent back to my residence. I inquired about why I was going to be sent back to my residence after I drove an extremely long distance to Rekon Retail's distant job site. I was informed that Rekon Retail does not need another worker. Before I left Rekon Retail's job site, I inquired about the remuneration that I would receive for showing up to Rekon Retail's job site to work the gig economy shift. I was notified by the manager of Rekon Retail that I would aptly receive half the remuneration for being sent back to my residence after arriving at Rekon Retail's job site. After the gig economy shift elapsed, Rekon Retail falsely marked me as a no-show, even though I drove almost 80 miles round trip to work the gig economy shift at Rekon Retail's job site. Rekon Retail also falsely changed my GPS tracked clock and time on the gig economy application for the Rekon Retail gig economy shift to no-show status. If I'm to be sent back to my residence after driving an extremely long distance to Rekon Retail's distant job site, then I should at least be furnished with half of the remuneration for showing up to Rekon Retail's job site to work the gig economy shift. My GPS track clock and time on the gig economy application for the Rekon Retail gig economy shift should have never been falsely changed to no-show status, especially after I drove an extremely long distance to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work a gig economy shift. These aforementioned injustices that Rekon Retail perpetrated against me are egregiously reprehensible. The opportunity cost to drive to and from Rekon Retail's job site was eminently steep on my end, and not only culminated in me expending a substantial amount of fuel and a substantial amount of time, but it also culminated in me forgoing at least 4 hours of potential work time. It also culminated in my account in the gig economy application getting falsely restricted based on a false, spurious, fallacious, erroneous, invalid reason. The grievous injustices of Rekon Retail that were perpetrated against me are not only flagrantly deplorable, but are also reprehensible, repugnant, revolting, heinous, and immoral. Lamentably, much to my dismay, much to my chagrin, much to my grief, much to my agony, much to my agitation, much to my irritation, Rekon Retail will never implement the moral course of action. In other words, they'll never redress the issue. They will never rectify the issue. They will never remedy the issue. If I am to be sent back to my residence after driving to a distant job site to work a gig economy shift that I was hired to work, then I should at least be furnished with half of the remuneration for showing up to the job site to work the gig economy shift. If the employer intends to pay me $0 after I show up to the distant job site to work the gig economy shift that I was hired to work, then the employer should cancel the gig economy shift in advance. If an employer does not need an additional gig economy worker to work a gig economy shift that the gig economy worker was hired to work in advance, then you should at least remunerate the gig economy worker for showing up to the job site to work the gig economy shift. Prior to the advent of me driving to the distant job site to work the gig economy shift, I was working remotely. It is a calamitous predicament that I've forgone 4 hours of potential work time to drive to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work the gig economy shift. I did not anticipate that it would culminate in me not only hemorrhaging 4 hours of potential work time, but also hemorrhaging fuel and not being furnished with any remuneration for showing up to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work the gig economy shift. In conclusion, at a principle, under no circumstance should you ever work for Rekon Retail. If you work for Rekon Retail, there is a possibility that you may be furnished with $0 post driving to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work a gig economy shift if you are hired to work a gig economy shift at Rekon Retail's distant job site. If you are hired to work a gig economy shift at Rekon Retail's distant job site, then there is also a possibility that Rekon Retail may mark you as a no-show after you drove to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work a gig economy shift. If you're hired by Rekon Retail to work a gig economy shift, then there's also a possibility that Rekon Retail may falsely change your GPS tracked clock and time to no-show status on the gig economy application for the Rekon Retail gig economy shift after you have shown up to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work the gig economy shift. Be wary, be leery, and be cautious about applying to work a shift for Rekon Retail on a gig economy application. So, in conclusion, my payment by Rekon Retail to me was $0 after I drove almost 80 miles round trip to his job site to work a gig economy shift that I was hired to work. Just because I was dispatched back to my residence by Rekon Retail after I drove an extremely long distance to Rekon Retail's distant job site does not mean that it should have culminated in me receiving $0 in remuneration by Rekon Retail. After I spoke to the manager at Rekon Retail's job site who dispatched me back to my residence, I was under the impression that I would be receiving at least half the remuneration post showing up to Rekon Retail's distant job site to work the gig economy shift. If Rekon Retail was overstaffed and had too many gig economy workers, then they should have simply canceled my gig economy shift in advance. My recommendation is to never work for Rekon Retail under any circumstance. A worker who shows up to a distant job site to work a gig economy shift that he was hired to work in advance should never be erroneously nor falsely marked as a no-show. Rekon Retail refused to pay me a penny for showing up to the job site to work the gig economy shift that I was hired in advance to work. This aforementioned calamity is the first time that I've encountered this aforementioned issue on a gig economy application, even though I've worked well over 70 highly time-depleting gig economy shifts on gig economy applications. It is always preferable to work in worthwhile entrepreneurial capacities than to work gig economy shifts on gig economy applications. If a gig economy worker is sent back to his residence post arriving at the employer's job site to work a gig economy shift, then he should be remunerated for showing up to the employer's job site to work the gig economy shift. I hope that you deem this video to be insightful and informative. Have a blissful day. Goodbye.